What did the WNBA try to hide when replacing their biggest star? And why are suspensions now on the table?
Wow! Paige Bueckers has only received one flagrant foul.
When one player takes 17% of all flagrant fouls in the league, is this incompetence or conspiracy?
She received nearly all the damn flagrant fouls for the entire WNBA league. Y'all understand this?
Let's examine the numbers, because statistics never lie, regardless of personal opinions or biases. Throughout the current season, one player has absorbed a disproportionate amount of flagrant fouls compared to the rest of the league combined. This isn't coincidence or bad luck. It's a pattern that suggests systematic targeting. When a single athlete receives such an overwhelming percentage of these calls, we must question whether the league has an agenda against their most marketable star. The 2025 season has brought unprecedented scrutiny to rookie performances and veteran expectations. Some analysts have attempted to draw parallels between Paige Bueckers and Caitlin Clark's debut campaigns, but this comparison lacks merit when examined closely. The statistical disparities tell a completely different story. Clark's rookie year was remarkable not just for her individual achievements, but for how she handled the intense pressure that came with receiving roughly 17% of all flagrant fouls called across the entire league. This level of targeted aggression toward a single player is virtually unheard of in professional basketball. What makes this situation even more troubling is how every major controversy within the WNBA seems to orbit around one central figure. Why does Caitlin Clark continuously find herself at the center of league drama? Why is the organization seemingly content to undermine the very athlete who has brought unprecedented attention, television ratings, and ticket sales to their product? The logic defies explanation, yet the pattern persists. Tonight's investigation will reveal the complete picture surrounding both Caitlin Clark and Paige Bueckers. The information we've uncovered will fundamentally change how you view recent events within women's professional basketball. But before diving deeper into this analysis, consider showing your support for transparency in sports journalism by engaging with this content and subscribing for future investigations into stories the WNBA hopes remain buried. The fundamental problem with constantly measuring other players against Caitlin Clark's standard is that it diminishes their individual accomplishments while highlighting their shortcomings. This approach serves no constructive purpose and often makes the comparison appear foolish. While Paige Bueckers certainly possesses specific skills that could be considered superior to Clark's, particularly her mid-range shooting ability and off-ball movement, attempting to argue for overall superiority requires ignoring substantial evidence to the contrary. When evaluating complete basketball packages and comprehensive talent levels, making such arguments requires willful ignorance of statistical reality. The comparison simply doesn't hold up under scrutiny, and continuing to push this narrative is counterproductive for everyone involved. The timeline of events speaks for itself. The moment Caitlin Clark suffered her injury, whispers began circulating throughout basketball circles. Suddenly, Paige Bueckers was being positioned as the natural replacement, the player who could seamlessly step into Clark's role and maintain the same level of excitement and performance. Supporters of this theory genuinely believed they were witnessing the emergence of the next superstar. However, the WNBA hierarchy hoped fans wouldn't notice the glaring differences in actual performance. What followed can only be described as a comprehensive failure on multiple levels. Critics labeled Bueckers' showing as substandard basketball that failed to justify the surrounding hype. The promotional buildup created expectations that the actual gameplay couldn't support. Rather than rising to meet the moment, Paige found herself overwhelmed by the same intense scrutiny and pressure that Caitlin Clark had been managing throughout her entire rookie campaign. The crucial difference was that Clark had demonstrated the mental fortitude to thrive under such conditions, while Bueckers appeared to crumble when faced with similar circumstances. The fan reaction was swift and unforgiving. Social media platforms exploded with criticism as supporters recognized this attempt for what it truly represented, a desperate effort to replace the league's only genuine drawing power. The backlash wasn't just about basketball performance. It reflected deeper frustrations with how the WNBA treats its most valuable asset, The situation deteriorated further when reports emerged suggesting Bueckers had created additional drama involving teammate Lexi Hull. These alleged behind-the-scenes conflicts generated toxic distractions that undermined team chemistry and focus. The fan base had reached its breaking point, flooding social platforms with accusations that the league had become a dysfunctional circus, prioritizing drama over basketball excellence. The recurring theme became impossible to ignore. Every controversy seemed designed to diminish Caitlin Clark's influence and achievements. This pattern has created a paradoxical situation where the WNBA simultaneously benefits from Clark's star power, while apparently working to undermine her dominance. Consider the fundamental contradiction at the heart of this issue. Caitlin Clark generates millions of television viewers, sells out arenas across the country, and brings substantial revenue to an organization that has historically struggled with financial sustainability. Yet instead of protecting and promoting their most marketable athlete, league officials seem content, allowing players like Angel Reese and now Paige Bueckers to engage in behavior that generates negative publicity and controversy. The motivation becomes clearer when viewed through the lens of institutional control. Professional sports leagues often struggle when individual players become larger than the organizations themselves. The WNBA appears uncomfortable with Clark's transcendent popularity, viewing it as a threat to their authority rather than an unprecedented opportunity for growth. This dynamic reveals the truth behind Paige Bueckers' positioning as a replacement candidate. Rather than genuinely seeking to elevate the league's overall talent level, this appeared to be a calculated attempt to diminish Clark's irreplaceable status. The strategy backfired spectacularly, exposing the flawed thinking behind such maneuvering. One of the most frustrating aspects of this entire situation involves the inconsistent media coverage and analysis that different players receive. The disparities become particularly obvious when examining how Caitlin Clark's rookie season was evaluated compared to current discussions about other players' performances. Clark dominated the Rookie of the Year conversation from early in the season, yet media personalities continued questioning her worthiness throughout the campaign. Major sports networks featured multiple segments debating whether she deserved unanimous recognition, despite her clearly superior statistical performance and impact on league visibility. These same media standards seem suspiciously absent when evaluating other rookies' performances. The inconsistency suggests either incompetence in analysis or deliberate bias in coverage. Neither explanation reflects well on the sports journalism industry's approach to women's basketball. The situation reached a new level of controversy when reports surfaced detailing Paige Bueckers' alleged behind-the-scenes behavior. Multiple sources, including players, coaching staff, and league insiders, described a pattern of drama creation, team disruption, and generally counterproductive conduct. Fan reactions have escalated beyond simple criticism to demands for official disciplinary action. Many supporters believe Bueckers should face suspension or more severe penalties for her role in attempting to undermine the league's premier attraction. The sentiment reflects growing frustration with the WNBA's apparent tolerance for behavior that damages the sport's reputation and marketability. Imagine the absurdity of this ongoing crisis. Nearly every day brings new controversies and scandals, yet the common denominator remains constant attacks on Caitlin Clark's reputation and achievements. The fan base has grown exhausted by this relentless negativity and is demanding meaningful change in how the league operates. Here's the unvarnished reality of the situation. Paige Bueckers attempted to capitalize on Caitlin Clark's temporary absence and establish herself as a legitimate replacement for the league's biggest star. The attempt failed comprehensively, exposing the vast gap between promotional hype and actual basketball ability. The WNBA's subsequent efforts to manage the narrative and minimize the damage have proven equally unsuccessful. Fans possess enough basketball knowledge to recognize authentic talent and performance, making it impossible to disguise substandard play with clever marketing or media manipulation. Every crisis the league faces ultimately traces back to their fundamental mismanagement of their most valuable asset. Their refusal to properly protect and promote Caitlin Clark has created an environment where lesser players feel empowered to engage in destructive behavior without consequences. This pattern of targeting extends beyond simple competitive rivalry. The intensity and frequency of aggressive play directed toward Clark suggests a coordinated effort to diminish her effectiveness and potentially force her out of the league entirely. Such behavior would be counterproductive for any professional sports organization, but it's particularly damaging for the WNBA given their financial dependence on Clark's drawing power. The defensive pressure and physical intimidation tactics employed against Clark exceed anything typically seen in professional basketball. No other player in either the WNBA or NBA faces comparable levels of aggressive double teams, physical contact, and referee inconsistency. Yet Clark continues to perform at an elite level despite these obstacles, demonstrating remarkable mental toughness and basketball IQ. Recent performances have highlighted these disparities even more clearly. While other players struggle under minimal pressure and fold under scrutiny, Clark consistently delivers high-level performances regardless of the circumstances. When teams attempt to trap or pressure her, she typically finds ways to create scoring opportunities for teammates or capitalize on the defensive overcommitment. The statistical evidence supports this analysis conclusively. Teams are significantly more likely to force turnovers when pressuring other players compared to their success rate against Clark. This suggests superior court vision, decision-making ability, and composure under pressure, exactly the qualities that separate genuine stars from temporary media darlings. Recent games have provided perfect examples of these disparities in performance under pressure. When faced with intense defensive attention, most players either turn the ball over or take poor shots. Clark, however, has developed an uncanny ability to recognize these situations early and make plays that benefit her team, regardless of the defensive strategy. The contrast becomes even more obvious when examining how different players handle media attention and fan expectations. While some athletes crumble under the weight of public scrutiny, Clark has consistently embraced the spotlight and used it as motivation for improved performance. The current debate surrounding potential disciplinary action raises fundamental questions about the WNBA's priorities and decision-making processes. Should players face suspension for attempting to undermine their colleagues through behind-the-scenes manipulation and public controversy creation? The precedent set by the league's response will significantly impact future behavior and the overall culture within women's professional basketball. Alternatively, perhaps the more important question involves whether the WNBA will finally acknowledge their dependence on Caitlin Clark's star power and adjust their policies accordingly. The organization must decide whether they want to continue enabling destructive behavior that damages their most valuable product, or whether they're prepared to implement meaningful protections for the athlete who has single-handedly elevated their profile. The stakes couldn't be higher for the league's future viability. The nuclear option, Clark deciding she's experienced enough mistreatment and choosing to leave professional basketball entirely, would devastate the WNBA's financial prospects and cultural relevance. Television ratings would plummet, attendance would crater, and media coverage would return to pre-Clark levels of indifference. This scenario isn't merely hypothetical speculation. Professional athletes have finite careers and limited tolerance for systematic mistreatment. If the WNBA continues prioritizing politics and personal vendettas over protecting their marquee attraction, they risk losing the very person who has made their recent success possible. The mathematical reality is straightforward. Without Caitlin Clark, the WNBA reverts to its previous status as a niche sport with minimal mainstream appeal. Attendance figures, television contracts, and sponsorship deals all depend heavily on her continued participation and star power. Losing her would represent an organizational catastrophe from which the league might never recover. The basketball community's response to these revelations has been overwhelmingly supportive of transparency and accountability. Fans are demanding honest analysis of player performance rather than manufactured controversies designed to diminish legitimate achievements. They want the focus returned to actual basketball rather than the soap opera dramatics that have dominated recent headlines. This sentiment reflects a broader frustration with how women's professional sports are covered and promoted. Rather than celebrating authentic excellence and building sustainable fan bases around genuine talent, too much attention gets devoted to manufactured rivalries and artificial drama that serves no constructive purpose. The path forward requires the WNBA to make fundamental choices about their organizational values and priorities. They can continue enabling the destructive behavior that creates short-term headlines while undermining long-term stability. Or they can implement policies that protect and promote the athletes who actually drive their success. The evidence clearly demonstrates which approach serves the league's best interests. Caitlin Clark's impact on attendance, television ratings, and general cultural relevance far exceeds any temporary attention generated by manufactured controversies. Building around authentic talent and protecting valuable assets represents basic business logic that any competent organization should embrace. The current situation also highlights broader issues within professional sports regarding how leagues manage their most marketable personalities. The tension between organizational control and individual star power has created problems across multiple sports, but the WNBA's small market size makes these dynamics particularly crucial to address effectively. Moving forward, the league must decide whether they want to embrace Caitlin Clark's transcendent appeal and build their marketing strategy around her unique ability to attract mainstream attention, or whether they prefer maintaining the status quo of mediocrity, punctuated by manufactured drama. The choice seems obvious from any rational business perspective, yet the WNBA's recent behavior suggests they haven't fully grasped the implications of their decision-making. Time will tell whether organizational leadership possesses the wisdom to protect their most valuable asset, or whether they'll continue pursuing counterproductive strategies that damage their long-term prospects. The basketball world will be watching closely to see how this situation develops. The precedents established now will influence not only Caitlin Clark's career trajectory, but also the broader culture within women's professional basketball for years to come. Ultimately, this controversy represents a defining moment for the WNBA's future direction and credibility as a professional sports organization. The ripple effects of these decisions extend far beyond individual player careers or single-season performances. We're witnessing the formation of precedents that will influence how professional women's basketball operates for decades to come. The way the league handles this situation will either establish them as a serious professional organization capable of protecting their assets and maintaining competitive integrity, or it will cement their reputation as a dysfunctional entity more interested in manufactured drama than legitimate athletic competition. Consider the broader implications for young athletes watching these events unfold. What message does it send to aspiring basketball players when they observe the league's most successful performer being systematically targeted, while less accomplished players receive preferential treatment? The educational impact of these choices resonates throughout youth basketball programs, high school competitions, and collegiate recruiting processes. The financial ramifications deserve equal consideration. Major corporations invest millions of dollars in WNBA sponsorship deals based on projected viewership numbers, attendance figures, and general market penetration. These business partnerships depend heavily on the league's ability to maintain consistent quality and avoid the kind of negative publicity that drives away mainstream audiences. Corporate sponsors didn't increase their investment in women's basketball to associate their brands with controversy and dysfunction. They responded to Caitlin Clark's unique ability to attract viewers who had never previously shown interest in the WNBA. If the league continues creating an environment that might drive away their primary attraction, these financial relationships will inevitably suffer. The television industry provides another crucial perspective on these developments. Broadcasting contracts worth hundreds of millions of dollars hinge on the WNBA's capacity to deliver compelling programming that justifies premium advertising rates. Network executives didn't negotiate these deals expecting to showcase manufactured drama between players. They invested in legitimate athletic competition, featuring the sport's most talented performers. Caitlin Clark's presence transforms otherwise routine basketball games into must-see television events. Her absence from the league would immediately impact viewership numbers, forcing networks to reconsider their programming strategies and potentially renegotiate contract terms. The domino effect would devastate the WNBA's financial foundation and eliminate much of the progress they've achieved in recent years. The international dimension adds another layer of complexity to this situation. Women's basketball has been gaining momentum globally, with the WNBA positioned as the premier professional league worldwide. International players, coaches, and organizations observe how the league treats its marquee performers as an indicator of overall organizational competence and stability. If talented international prospects conclude that the WNBA prioritizes politics over performance, they might choose to pursue opportunities in European leagues or other professional circuits. This brain drain would further diminish the league's competitive quality and global reputation, creating a negative feedback loop that could prove extremely difficult to reverse. The coaching community represents another stakeholder group with significant concerns about these developments. Professional coaches invest their careers in developing winning strategies and building competitive teams. When league policies or unofficial practices undermine their ability to utilize their best players effectively, it creates frustration that extends throughout the entire basketball ecosystem. Experienced coaches understand that sustainable success requires protecting and developing elite talent, rather than enabling behavior that undermines team chemistry and competitive balance. They recognize that allowing lesser players to target superior performers with impunity creates a toxic environment that drives away the very athletes who make professional basketball compelling. The referee situation deserves special attention within this broader analysis. Officials play a crucial role in maintaining competitive integrity and ensuring that games are decided by athletic ability rather than favoritism or bias. When refereeing patterns consistently disadvantage specific players without apparent justification, it raises serious questions about the league's commitment to fair competition. Professional referees undergo extensive training and regular evaluation to maintain consistent standards across all games and situations. If these officials are receiving instructions or pressure to officiate certain players differently, it represents a fundamental violation of sporting principles that undermines the entire league's credibility. The statistical evidence regarding flagrant fouls called against Caitlin Clark suggests systematic bias that extends beyond normal game-to-game variation. When one player receives such a disproportionate percentage of these penalties compared to the rest of the league combined, it indicates either incompetent officiating or deliberate targeting. Neither explanation reflects well on the WNBA's operational standards. Fan engagement metrics provide another compelling argument for protecting the league's most valuable performers. Social media analytics, website traffic, merchandise sales, and general online discussions all spike significantly when Caitlin Clark is featured in games or promotional content. This organic fan interest represents exactly the kind of authentic engagement that professional sports organizations spend millions of dollars trying to generate artificially. The contrast becomes even more obvious when examining fan reactions to other players and storylines. While manufactured controversies might generate temporary attention, they rarely translate into sustained interest or financial support. Authentic talent and compelling performances create lasting fan relationships that drive long-term revenue growth and brand loyalty. Season ticket sales data reinforces this analysis conclusively. Teams featuring Caitlin Clark consistently sell out their home venues and generate substantial revenue from premium seating, concessions, and merchandise. Road games against her team similarly experience dramatic attendance increases compared to typical matchups. This economic impact extends throughout the entire league, benefiting every franchise, regardless of their direct competitive relationship with Clark's team. The merchandising implications deserve separate consideration, given their importance to overall league revenue. Jersey sales, memorabilia, and licensed products featuring Caitlin Clark consistently outperform similar items for other players by substantial margins. Retail partnerships and licensing agreements depend on this consistent consumer demand to justify their investment in WNBA-branded products. If Clark were to leave the league or significantly reduce her involvement due to mistreatment, the merchandising impact would be immediate and severe. Retailers would reduce their WNBA inventory, licensing partners would renegotiate their agreements, and overall revenue from product sales would decline dramatically. The media landscape provides additional context for understanding these dynamics. Sports journalism has evolved significantly in recent years, with traditional outlets competing against social media influencers, independent analysts, and fan-generated content for audience attention. This competitive environment rewards authentic stories and compelling personalities rather than manufactured drama. Caitlin Clark's natural charisma and exceptional basketball ability provide exactly the kind of content that drives media engagement across multiple platforms. Her interviews are widely shared, her game highlights generate millions of views, and her presence at events guarantees extensive coverage. This organic media interest represents invaluable publicity that most organizations would invest heavily to achieve artificially. The contrast with other players and storylines is stark. While controversy might generate short-term attention, it rarely creates the kind of positive association that builds lasting brand value. Media outlets prefer covering success stories and exceptional performances rather than dysfunction and interpersonal drama. Youth development programs represent another stakeholder group with significant interest in how these situations are resolved. Basketball camps, training facilities, and development leagues all benefit when the professional game features positive role models who demonstrate excellence both on and off the court. Young athletes need inspirational figures who show them what's possible through dedication, hard work, and natural talent. When the professional league appears to undermine or diminish its most successful performers, it sends confusing messages to the next generation of potential players. The educational value of professional sports extends beyond pure entertainment. Young people learn important lessons about perseverance, teamwork, and excellence by observing how elite athletes handle pressure and adversity. Caitlin Clark's ability to maintain high-performance standards despite systematic targeting provides valuable lessons about resilience and mental toughness. The competitive balance argument also merits serious consideration. Professional sports leagues generally strive to maintain some degree of parity between teams to ensure that every game remains compelling and unpredictable. However, this balance should be achieved through salary caps, draft systems, and roster construction rules, rather than by allowing inferior players to target superior performers. When leagues permit or encourage behavior that diminishes their best athletes, it doesn't create genuine competitive balance. It simply reduces the overall quality of play and entertainment value. Fans don't want to see artificial parity achieved through dysfunction. They want to witness elite athletes competing at the highest possible level. The historical precedent established by other professional sports leagues offers important guidance for addressing these challenges. The NBA, NFL, and other major organizations have all faced similar situations where individual players became larger than the league itself. The most successful responses typically involved embracing these transcendent talents rather than attempting to diminish their influence. Michael Jordan's impact on the NBA provides the most obvious parallel. Rather than trying to limit his influence or enable other players to target him unfairly, the league built its marketing strategy around his unique appeal and protected him as a valuable asset. This approach generated unprecedented growth in television viewership, international expansion, and overall cultural relevance. The WNBA has a similar opportunity with Caitlin Clark, but their response will determine whether they capitalize on this potential or squander it through misguided policies and poor decision-making. The window for making the correct choice may be limited, as professional athletes have finite careers and limited tolerance for systematic mistreatment. The legal and regulatory environment also influences how these situations must be handled. Professional sports leagues operate under various federal and state regulations regarding fair competition, workplace safety, and employee treatment. Allowing systematic targeting of specific players could potentially create legal liability if it results in injury or career damage. Players' union agreements typically include provisions protecting members from discriminatory treatment and ensuring that competitive opportunities are distributed fairly. If union representatives determine that certain players are being systematically disadvantaged, they might pursue grievances or other formal complaints that could result in significant financial penalties for the league. The insurance implications deserve consideration as well. Professional athletes carry substantial injury insurance policies that protect both individual players and their teams against financial losses resulting from career-ending incidents. If insurance providers conclude that certain players face elevated injury risks due to league policies or unofficial practices, premium costs could increase dramatically. The broadcast production perspective adds another dimension to this analysis. Television directors, camera operators, and production crews understand which players generate the most compelling content for viewers. They recognize that audiences tune in to see exceptional performances, rather than manufactured drama or controversial incidents. When the league's most telegenic and talented performers are being systematically targeted, it creates challenges for broadcast teams trying to showcase the sport effectively. Producers want to feature athletes who demonstrate the highest levels of skill and competitiveness, not players who generate attention through negative behavior. The architectural and facility management aspects of professional basketball also connect to these broader themes. Arena operators invest millions of dollars in creating entertainment venues that can accommodate large crowds and provide premium experiences for fans. These investments only generate positive returns when the events being hosted consistently attract capacity audiences. Caitlin Clark's presence guarantees sellout crowds and maximum revenue generation for every venue she visits. Arena operators understand that protecting and promoting their most valuable performers directly impacts their financial success and operational efficiency. The technology sector provides yet another perspective on these developments. Sports analytics companies, streaming platforms, and digital content providers all benefit from increased fan engagement and viewership numbers. Their business models depend on having compelling content that drives user interaction and subscription growth. The data clearly demonstrates that Caitlin Clark generates more digital engagement than any other WNBA player by substantial margins. Her social media mentions, video views, and search volume consistently exceed other athletes in the league. Technology partners recognize this value and structure their relationships with the WNBA accordingly. As we examine all these interconnected factors, the conclusion becomes unavoidable. The WNBA stands at a crossroads that will determine their trajectory for the next decade or longer. They can choose to embrace and protect their most valuable asset, building sustainable growth around authentic talent and exceptional performance. Alternatively, they can continue enabling destructive behavior that undermines their own success and drives away the athletes who make their product compelling. The evidence overwhelmingly supports the former approach. Every metric that matters — attendance, television viewership, merchandise sales, social media engagement, and general cultural relevance — points toward Caitlin Clark as the key to the league's continued growth and prosperity. The question now is whether WNBA leadership possesses the wisdom and courage to make the obvious choice, or whether they'll continue pursuing counterproductive strategies that damage their long-term viability. The basketball world is watching, and the consequences of their decision will reverberate throughout women's professional sports for generations to come.